We've known for years that there is not enough housing for workers in the North Country, especially in the Adirondacks. Well, now new data defines precisely how severe the housing shortage is and what kind of impact it's having on the region. A conversation with the agency that commissioned the study about the depth of the problem and some potential solutions on today's Story of the Day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Pearsall Wealth Management at UBS Wealth Management USA, subsidiary UBS AG, member FINRA SIPC, 1 Broad Street, Glens Falls, and Claxton Hepburn Medical Center, dedicated to providing patient care and regional services to the people of St. Lawrence County. ClaxtonHepburn.org.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Monday, May 1st. First up, if you want to hike from one of the most popular trailheads in the Adirondacks, you'll need to reserve a spot in advance, starting today until the end of October. This is the third year that reservations are required to hike from the Adirondack Mountain Reserve, a 7,000-acre private property in the High Peaks. The reservation system first launched in 2021 to manage hiker traffic and improve safety along Route 73. According to the DEC, there were more than 10,000 reservations made last year. You can reserve a spot up to 2 weeks in advance at the website hikeamr.org. The upper locks in Saranac Lake are temporarily closed this week for routine maintenance. The upper locks are located in between middle and lower Saranac Lakes. The original upper locks were built in 1890. They were last renovated in 1970 so that the gates could be opened and closed with compressed air. According to the DEC, the upper locks will be closed to boats tomorrow through Thursday. If you're paddling a canoe or kayak, you can carry your boat around the locks. A popular ice cream stand in Chateaugay burned down last Thursday morning. Harrigan's had been a staple in the region for decades. Lucy Grindon has more.
People have been getting soft serve at Harrigan's in Chateaugay for 33 years, especially summertime campers.
My husband knew about it because he had went with his family. There's a campground out there called Ponderosa, so they would all, I guess, stop there for ice cream on the way to go to camp in the summers.
That's Natalie Jarvis from Malone. She reached out to NCPR to tell us about Harrigan's last summer when we were putting together our North Country ice cream map.
I'm not a big ice cream fan, but theirs is the best. I would always get one of their baby cones, but they're huge. They weren't baby cones.
According to the Malone Telegram, firefighters responded early Thursday morning to find the business fully engulfed in flames. The fire chief from Chateaugay told the paper there wasn't anything they could do to stop the fire, so they knocked the building down instead. Chris Cordes is another Harrigan's fan from Malone.
Me and my granddaughter like to go there.
Cordes says that without Harrigan's, there won't be another ice cream stand in that area this summer.
I mean, there are other places, but there isn't any place close to there. You know, it's a 20-minute drive from almost anywhere.
Harrigan's had just opened for the season last Friday. The owner, Debbie Harrigan, told the paper she's not sure what's next for the ice cream stand. Lucy Grindon, North Country Public Radio.
We got in touch with Natalie Jarvis and Chris Cordes about Harrigan's via the NCPR Texting Club. You can join the Texting Club and help us cover the local news that's important to you by texting NEW to 315-978-6277. The Lake Champlain-Lake George Regional Planning Board released an extensive study this spring on workforce housing. It focuses on 4 counties in the region: Clinton, Essex, Franklin, and Hamilton. The study found there's a shortage of about 20,000 housing units in the region, and that there'll be an additional demand of 7,000 more homes in the next decade. Emily Russell spoke with the board's executive director, Beth Gillis, about key takeaways from the study.
So, Beth, why did the board take on this housing study?
Workforce housing, I think everybody knows, is a big issue in the North Country, but when you're trying to do something about it or apply for grant funding, you need to have solid data behind it. And there was a lot of anecdotal evidence. I think everybody kind of knew it and felt it, but we took on the study to be able to put numbers behind what's happening with our workforce housing crisis.
And so part of your report focuses on the affordability gap, looking at income in this region. What were some of the key takeaways around that data?
So the top 3 employment sectors or jobs that people have are 3 of the lowest paid jobs. And so what happens is when you have a lower paid year-round workforce and you have higher housing costs, which are driven up by seasonal homes and prices going up, there's just a big income gap between what people can afford based on what they're paid for with their jobs and what houses are actually selling for in the region.
And then that, as you found, affects what employers are capable of doing. So talk a little bit about the information that you found when you talked to employers about housing.
Yeah, so we did an employer survey. We had 95 employers answer, and 38% of them said that they have had a prospective employee decline a position because they couldn't find housing.
When you think about that statistic, how do you see that playing into the broader just economy and way of life in the Adirondacks?
I think the year-round population in the Adirondacks is a very important population, and I think that we need to be working on workforce housing if we want to work on more businesses and more amenities available within the region.
What are some of the barriers to building the amount of housing that we need here in the Adirondacks?
Cost is the biggest barrier. It's really expensive to build a home in the Adirondack Park, even for workforce housing levels. So cost and workforce of building those homes. We have a lack of contractors. We've lost contractors and electricians within the region in the last 10 years, so there's not anyone to build the houses.
And are there policy changes or things that your board or others are looking into to potentially try and build more or attract more contractors to help solve this problem?
Yeah, we're looking at, when we talk about development, we're looking at development within the hamlets because they have the greatest density availabilities. And it's not just all about building homes. There's a huge proponent for renovating existing structures. Actually, when we did our public outreach, it was overwhelming 2-to-1. Communities were more interested in rehabilitation than in new housing. And rehabilitation, again, is expensive. So we are we're looking at what's in the hamlets, what's available to be rehabbed, and how we can help facilitate some of that work.
What is next now that this extensive report is out? What's next for your board and the partners you worked with?
So one of our main goals as an organization is to bring state and federal resources into the region, and we do that through a lot of competitive grants. So we've actually written multiple grants to get money in for housing rehab, for a revolving loan fund that would help rehabilitate long-term rentals. And we're working on some other programs with the Adirondack Community Housing Trust and using kind of the existing housing entities that do exist in the Adirondacks and helping elevate them and fund them to do the work that they do.
I wonder if you could just kind of daydream about everything that needs to go into solving the housing crisis in the Adirondacks. What would that look like?
It's money. It's money to rehab. It's money to revitalize. It's money for infrastructure. When you're talking about bringing more people in, whether it's building houses or rehabilitating apartments to bring people in, we have to make sure that our hamlets, our towns, have the available water, wastewater infrastructure. And we also have to remember we're in the Adirondack Park, and it's really important for us to maintain the character of the park when we talk about rehabilitating and potentially new housing. And so it's just going to take a lot of collaboration and a lot of people to make it happen.
That was Beth Gillis, Executive Director of the Lake Champlain Lake George Regional Planning Board, speaking with our Adirondack reporter, Emily Russell. We have more news all the time on our website, ncpr.org. Get a leg up on your regional news by listening to Story of the Day as a podcast. It's free, and it arrives on your device automatically early, usually by 4 p.m. So you can drive home or start dinner listening to North Country News before it's on the radio. Subscribe to the podcast at ncpr.org/podcast or wherever you get your podcasts. Music today by Eddie Lawrence of Moira and Caretaker of Canton. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.